6, 5, 4.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Justine, and thanks for tuning in and welcome back to the Starboard Portal. Today we have our U.S. sailing team athletes and winners of the Olympic trials, Riley Gibbs and Anna Weiss, along with performance manager and Olympic coach, Sally Barkall. Anna and Riley are going to share a bit about their backgrounds and how they teamed up to pursue their race to Tokyo. Very excited to have you three with us today. And with that, I'll turn it over to Riley to get started with a short presentation. And please feel free to ask questions on the live chat, and we'll make sure to send them over to these guys.
Thanks, Justine. Just want to say thanks for everyone for having us. I know it's quite an operation and we're trying to make the best of it during these times. It's been quite the journey for Anna and I, and without further ado, I think we'll head into a video pretty shortly if Anna or Sally doesn't have anything to say.
Thanks for coming.
Into it.
I woke up this morning, Lord, I had a call, getting home. I woke up this morning, Lord, I had a call, getting home.
Sweet. All right.
Awesome. Just a glimpse of what you all do. So pretty good stuff. So Anna and Riley, you both come from very different backgrounds. Anna, you sailed Opties and transitioned into the laser radial. Riley, you grew up in Sabbats and started racing 505s. I know also both of you did some keelboat, big boat sailing. But why don't we start with you, Anna, and tell us a little bit about your backgrounds and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, so as you can see in the photo, I was a little crazy kid. Started in the Opti, and I out of Lauderdale Yacht Club, so right close to where I live. And after I was finished with Optis, I transitioned into the laser radial, like you said. Still out of Lauderdale Yacht Club. Did a lot of youth stuff, international stuff, and kind of then was when I realized that I really, really wanted to pursue the Olympic sailing. I went off to school, did some college sailing for about 2 semesters, and then I transitioned over to rowing because I felt like it was a better fit for me and what I kind of wanted to achieve. My plan was to finish college and then do a campaign in the laser, but Riley, I was lucky enough that Riley reached out to me to pursue a NACRA campaign with me. So I thought it was a great opportunity, and I couldn't really, I knew I would regret it if I didn't take that opportunity. So Started sailing with Riley in January of 2019. So I did about 2.5 years of college. And I took a leave of absence. My parents would probably kill me if I didn't say that. I'm going back to school, but so started sailing with him then, and here we are.
Awesome. Before we move on to you, Riley, Anna, let's just touch a little bit on, so kind of a strong single-handed background. Can you tell us a little bit about that transition into double-handed sailing with Riley?
Yeah, so I still kind of see it as a transition every day. You know, there's still a lot of times that it's just very different from sailing single-handed. You know, when you're sailing by yourself, all your thoughts are in your own head. You know, you're making all the decisions yourself. And in the radial, you know, there's a lot going on, but not as much going on at all compared to the NACRA, you know, because the NACRA is a much higher speed. You know, you're focusing on a lot more. There's a lot of things to control, you know, on the boat. And especially the communication part, you know, that was huge for me. So I think Riley's just been very helpful in understanding and helped me learn with, you know, transitioning. And I think that's been a huge part of why we've been able to develop quickly as a team. Obviously still a lot of work to go, but yeah, it's been tough, but it's definitely been a fun learning process for sure.
Awesome. And we'll get to dive in a little bit more about what goes on in the boat and all the complexities. But Riley, you want to take us through a little bit of who you are and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, for me, both my parents kind of grew up sailing, and their childhood was spent, you know, on the water just as much as I, you know, was growing up. The picture on the right is me when I'm, you know, 3 years old on a Cal 20 sailing in the bay, probably with my dad and my mom and my brother, just one day. And actually my first day on a boat, I was 2 weeks old sailing on an Etchells, you know, and like they just put me in the spinnaker bag and went and did like a club event at ABYC. And obviously I can't really remember that, but that's what they tell me. And then on the left, kind of where I fell in love with sailing and what I really enjoyed, and that was like the speed and the need for like acceleration. And kind of ever since I can really remember, like I loved the idea of going faster and faster, and then like the concept of going faster than the wind like really intrigued me. And like sailing apparent wind boats has really gotten me to where I am today. And you know, I remember back like sitting in class and as a 5th grader or something, when we're meant to be learning something in history class or something, and looking at a Seahorse magazine and, you know, looking at all the 29ers sailing and at photos from like Youth World or something. And, you know, I kind of knew that was my path and that's what I wanted to do, and dreamed and aspired to do that someday. And in the next slide, you can see Quinn Wilson and myself in the upper right-hand corner. Quinn and I were fortunate enough to go to the Youth Worlds together and win a silver medal together. That was a pretty interesting pairing. You know, we were 2 really competitive people coming from different backgrounds. You know, I'd sailed Fort Tony's with my brother and won PCCs with him. And Quinn was sailing with his brother Dane, and then Dane eventually aged out of the 29er. And so Quinn and I decided to sail together. And, you know, we seemed to spend like every waking hour of our lives between the ages of like, you know, 15 to 17 on the water, whether it was like surfing, kiting, or sailing 29ers. But yeah, and then that led me into kiteboarding. And you know, I really fell in love with that too. I really dove into that like head first, and ended up getting pretty good results on a world level, and a pretty decent sponsorship with F1 Kites. And you know, I've got to pay tribute to my kiting background and kind of all the different boats that I've sailed across or over the many years, you know, and especially kiting has like really developed a lot of skills and knowledge that I now use in the NACRA and the F50. So yeah.
Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about that transition of kind of the type of sailing you were doing before the NACRA. Anna, starting with you, and kind of what, how did that transition go, and what it looked like? What were some of the struggles for you?
Is this for me? Oh,
Yeah, sorry.
sorry.
Take it away.
I thought you were asking Riley about the transition with me. Okay. Yeah. So at first, it was like a race against time, So obviously I had never really been in a double-handed boat. This is my first time ever doing double-handed sailing, ever going on a trapeze. So basically everything on the boat was new. And so we basically just kind of went into it with the attitude that, we have nothing to lose. And so we try to keep an open mind and keep learning as much as we could, and I think we both were I guess we were just both very open to learning. And then I try to bring as many skills as I could from the laser into NACRA sailing. And that was pretty helpful. I think some of the struggles were, at least for me, were the communication, what to say at the right time, when to say it. Still it's something that we're working on constantly. So it's never gonna, I don't think it's ever gonna be 1000% perfect, but definitely that was something that was, taking thoughts in my head and putting it into words, because all the thoughts in my head when I was sailing lasers were my own thoughts, and I didn't have to say them at all. So I think that was the biggest thing for me that I struggled with.
Yeah, awesome. Riley, you want to talk a little bit about kind of the transition into the boat and what it looked like for you, kind of some of the strengths that you pulled from your background, and also maybe what popped out as something interesting that you learned starting in the NACRA?
Yeah, so and then we can get Sally will chime in here pretty soon, but
Oh yeah, I can't wait for Sally's perspective on you too.
yeah, for me it really started, I was Quinn and I, like, after finishing the 29er campaign, we really wanted to jump into the next best thing, and we got the opportunity to go and do the Red Bull foiling generation. And that was really cool, sailing the Flying Phantoms and meeting Roman Hagara and Hans Peter was pretty phenomenal. And not only did we win the US qualifier, we actually did quite well in the international event as well. And that really opened my eyes to catamaran sailing. I up until then I'd always kind of considered myself being like a skiff sailor, going from the 29er. I just thought naturally I'd go and sail the 49er. Tried it out a little bit, didn't really take it too seriously, did a Miami OCR here and there, but yeah, I was pretty inexperienced as far as campaigning and all that. And that's kind of where Louisa Chafee and I kind of teamed up. And, she really helped me get on track with understanding the campaign aspect of it and what it actually takes. And we sailed together for 3 years, but unfortunately it didn't really work out in the end. But, I really owe a lot of what I know today to that campaign. And we had a lot of fun, and my first, I think it was my first race in the NACRA. And we also had Sarah Newberry was coaching us at that event. It was Miami World Cup a couple of years ago. And we're we came off the starting line, and we're in a 30-degree lefty sailing in Miami, and we came off the pin, and now we're on top of the entire fleet, and we're leading the whole fleet back to the weather mark. And we just tacked short of starboard ley line, and ended up getting it right in. We came in pretty hot and very overcooked to the mark, and we're fully skimming. This is still in the old style boat, but fully skimming, and pretty much just mounted the weather mark. And there's a pretty classic photo. I try and hide it, but it keeps popping up here and then. But yeah, that was my first race in the NACRA. And the entire world contingency like sailed by us as we were like rafted up on the top mark. It was pretty hilarious. But yeah.
Yeah, definitely not an easy boat to transition to. A lot to
Yeah.
learn. With that, why don't we get a coach's perspective, Sally, kind of what you saw in Riley and Anna in terms of what strengths they're really bringing forward, kind of the big learning curves that they went through. Would love to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think this little chart here that they have is pretty indicative of how quickly these two athletes came together and, experienced a form of success where they won the Olympic trials and are on their way to being a great team in a really complicated boat that I think you'll see a little bit later. But, to me, these Anna and Riley, they come from two individual backgrounds where they not only love sailing, but they are, top athletes in competition on the water. And that doesn't necessarily always mean sailing. They've competed in a lot of different parts of sport that happen to do with water. And, now it's quite cool. They come together and they feed off each other. And, every day we go out there and you can see how much Anna smiles now and when she's flying on the water. And their dynamic with each other is really, it's really a joy to be out there with them because we're always pushing. So there's a level of, there's always a level of stress when you're learning stuff or you're trying to win something or you're competing, but these guys have a way of keeping that the drive and the goal, but not having it take over their lives. And I think that's pretty important when we talk about Olympic sailing, but also in a boat like this, where you just have to go on the water every day and have fun. And for sure, that's where they're at.
Awesome. So we can kind of maybe pivot to the next slide. And because I know we want to get to a little bit more of the technical stuff on the boat and how everything works and the different roles that you two play. So why don't we go through this quick video and then we'll come back in with a couple more questions.
So this is us sailing in Geelong in preparation for the Worlds and Oceanics earlier in February. Pretty flat water, lots of seaweed, jellyfish, cutting up jellyfish all the time, all day long. But yeah, we're fortunate enough to work with a pretty good group of coaches. Jay Glazer, unfortunately, he couldn't be on the call today, but he was a huge part of our success, and as well as Sally. But we've got Drew Malcolm flying the drone here. He photographer, works for CLGP USA. But Anna, you want to talk us through this next little bit, upwind stint of our roles?
Yeah, sure. So upwind, Riley's on the tiller and I'm on the main. So basically, I guess in the simplest way possible, I could describe our roles as, well, we're both focusing on speed, but I'm kind of trimming to what I feel and Riley's kind of steering to what I'm trimming to, and kind of vice versa. It can go both ways. So we really have to be in sync here, and really, feeling what each other is feeling, and communicating that is also, like I was kind of talking about earlier, it's sometimes really difficult, to kind of communicate what you're feeling, especially since you kind of like feel it in your body, So yeah, it's pretty flat water, so not a lot of, huge trimming. It's not really required, but I remember this day, it was really puffy and shifty.
Yeah, coming off the land.
Yeah, so and a lot of angle changes.
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting, like with the foils and everything in the class, where it's headed now with the T rudders and the Jagger board. So yeah, there's pretty good photos of what we're dealing with on the NACRA. But for us to achieve like optimum VMG sailing upwind on the NACRA, it's the boat isn't, at least yet, we haven't proven it to be the most efficient way of sailing to foil upwind in all conditions. So kind of developing the foil angle of attacks and settings, and sort of like a playbook between the different conditions is is, is very important to achieve like proper skimming and better VMG throughout the conditions. But so like, say whereas in this photo in the top left in Japan, we wouldn't be running nearly as much foil lift as we were in that nice flat water in Geelong. But yeah, the photo on the bottom is us after the Oceanic Championships in Geelong, or that's like one of the races downwind in Geelong?
Yeah, Geelong.
And then to the right, obviously just after a trophy presentation, and smiles all around, and there's Jay on the right. But yeah, that was a pretty nice day.
Awesome. Let's dive into this a little bit more. So a lot going on the boat. It sounds like Anna's trimming the main, and you're talking about foils and blades moving up and down. So how is everything divided up, and where are the priorities laying, and kind of what does the mental picture look like when you're sailing these boats?
Why don't we just go back one slide, and then we can talk through it. Yeah, so on the right, obviously, we have the rudder and the rudder gudgeons. That is, you're able to pivot that angle of attack on the rudder elevator off of a rose joint and a sliding plate, which is the 4 Allen bolts up on top of that top gudgeon there. With that, we can adjust the angle of attack on the rudder. So for different conditions, say we run different rudder rakes as well, and they run obviously in some kind of symbiotic with the daggerboard rake. So when obviously I guess Anna, you can speak to like when you first jumped in it, and it was all like, some things were going over your head, and it was like all just overwhelming. But you're getting into it now and pushing me to change settings faster and being more efficient with our time. But I guess when we first started, I was kind of having to keep track of it all, and now you're reminding me, which is good. So.
Yeah, for sure. And kind of, it's interesting because like for every different condition, we'll just try different numbers, and you're like, oh, that worked, that didn't work, so we're constantly trying new things. And I think that's one thing that's so cool about this class, is that everyone, like, you'll go to one event and then people will pick up on new things, and then you're like, oh, how do we not pick up on that? Or like, what did we pick up on that someone else didn't, so the class is always developing and learning very quickly. So you could be training super hard, getting so much better, but then you go and you're like, wow, you're not that much better than everybody else, because everyone's getting better. So, part of it is just trying new things and adjusting what you can. And yeah.
I thought it was also interesting, that the settings it's such a new class and what these guys are trying to do, and that the settings, there's nothing set in stone. So like we went into Geelong with like a really good concept of like rudder settings and board settings. And after like a week, we came out with like, wow, we are way off here. And what are the elements were so important for us to pay attention to with how you guys were setting up the boat. And, it just speaks to like how much sailing time is valuable in different venues. And yeah, I think you guys do a great job of feeling the boat and not necessarily having to get stuck in a number, but then making an adjustment and then coming away off the water with like a really good handle on the day. And that's comes down to how quickly you can improve as a team day to day in a venue. So it's a pretty cool part of this boat and different things you can try.
Yeah, I think that's definitely like one of the pros that Anna and I have as a new team. We're so willing to change and adapt to anything like that gets thrown at us. Like you got to go back to when I first called you, and you were like midway through your finals at your semester at BU, and you were like, yeah, this is all really good and exciting, but I got to go back to studying and focus on something. And I'm sure I was like driving you and your parents crazy. But yeah, and then I remember you picking me up at the airport in Miami, like for our first training camp or time sailing together in the NACRA. And I was like, look, this is the deal. Like, we've got X amount of days until we got to qualify, and we got to be like willing to run with the punches and take a couple knocks here or there, but I think we can do it. So yeah, and that played true all the way through, Olympic trials in Geelong, we had to deal with just blooming jellyfish and as well as seaweed, and adjusting all of our foil settings and sail trim and all of technique as well. It was super frustrating when all our settings that we'd been working on for the last year, we just threw them out the window because nothing worked for the first week we were there. But yeah, it was pretty frustrating to say.
Hopefully we'll never have to come across the seaweed venue again in a
Yeah.
foiling boat. But if you do, good
Yeah.
luck.
Yeah, you're prepared. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this rapid progression. I mean, despite some injuries, which we'll get to a little bit later, what are some of the things that you think contributed to it? I mean, for sure, kind of your personalities and how they've meshed together. And there's always this talk of how important it is to kind of find that right teammate. But kind of maybe what, Riley, you think in Anna's personality that's made this truly successful, and you guys to be able to kind of essentially get into the same mind and act as one on this boat.
Yeah, I think I think we don't take stuff too seriously usually. I mean, you can just listen to us, but like normally in the boat park, it's like Anna singing and me humming, or like on our best days, we're just like, I don't know, we're just so obnoxious. I'm sure everyone else is just completely annoyed with us, but we really try and keep it light, and you're meant to have fun with it and don't take yourself too seriously. I think that's the biggest name of the game. Like when you're going down this Olympic path and you spend so much time, with the other person, you're living with the other person, you're with them like 24/7, you're 10 minutes a day you can get away from the person is like, thank God, but no, when you're together and working together, it's really cool. And yeah, I think our personalities, we got lucky and kind of found each other, I guess, but we get along really well. So I don't know, Sally can add in if she wants, but
Oh, where to go with that? No, I think it's true. I said it before. I think it's you have to love the sport in a certain way to push through this Olympic grind, and you gotta love the boat you're on, and then you have to have a pretty cool relationship if you're going to be in a double, or in my case, it was a triple-handed boat, and I think it's a huge part of it, and you guys don't let up on that factor. If we have a tough day or something on the water, you work through it, and the next day is a clean slate, and you're coming out with your same personality, and there's no carryover of any hard feelings or anything. It's all about how we progressing forward, and there are strengths and weaknesses of your team, but you don't you've done a really good job of not dwelling on those and making them a problem as you go along, and it's something that we work on every day.
Yeah, I think we're pretty willing to, like, if we do have a dark day or something, we're pretty willing to like leave it on the water, and yeah, that's another thing is like when we first started, we're like, all right, we're not going to hold anything back. Like if we have an issue with the other person, like bring it up. And yeah, that's really gone a long way for us.
Awesome. Anna, anything you want to add there? Or we got a couple questions coming in from the audience.
You can ask some questions. I think they covered it.
All right, awesome. So this kind of goes with kind of rolling with the punches and kind of moving forward. What is kind of the revised preparation plan given the delay in the Olympics? This is coming from our good friend Sean Bennett out in San Francisco.
Nice. I guess I can take that because I know Sean pretty well. But hi, Sean. Thanks for all your support and believing in us over the years. And yeah, moving forward with the unforeseen circumstances that we've got in front of us, we're trying to make the best out of it. We're obviously, like Anna and I are, you can't really go to a gym anywhere. So we're doing a lot of home workouts and cycling a lot, really taking advantage of our time off the water. But yeah, looking forward, I think our first day back in the NACRA hopefully be around the first week of June, if it all goes right, with a huge focus on domestic training and skills building, because our time together and kind of our campaign to qualify for the Olympics was so expedited that we prioritized a lot of things over building the clear basics of trapezing and foiling, and like all of my skills I've learned from kiting, I really want to share with Anna, and moth sailing. So got to get her out kite foiling and mothing and get some more experience in. But yeah, a lot of sailing at home coming up.
Yeah, no, awesome. I think you two have definitely proven that you can get a lot done in a short amount of time. So I know we're all excited to watch that happen as we go through this next year leading up to the next games. Do we want to pop ahead in the next slide and just kind of move on to kind of highlight the hurdles that you two overcame and kind of didn't even let it derail you one bit? But we can start with Anna, a little bit of the injury recovery that you went through, and Riley, you can follow up. So Anna, you want to just tune in?
Yeah, sure. So unfortunately, since day one of sailing the NACRA, I kind of started developing these pain in my forearms, and I thought, I was like, oh, I just got to build some strength. I'm not used to carrying all this load, for 3.5 hours a day. Basically the main issue was all this pressure would build up in my forearms and I couldn't really grip anything anymore. And so I wasn't really sure what it was. Went to PAMA. I remember this moment so clearly. I was like, after the race, I was like, I couldn't hold on, and it was actually the last race of the day, I'm pretty sure, and we were winning the race, and I like couldn't get out on the trapeze because I couldn't grip anything, and it was the last drive into the downwind, and Riley goes, "Come on, Anna, you gotta want it." I was like, "I do," and so I got out on the trapeze, finished the race, but after that race, Riley cut my sleeves. I remember he cut his finger, cutting my sleeves to the wetsuit, to relieve the pressure, and I would like stick my arms in the water, to reduce inflammation. And so basically, I kept dealing with this issue every single day of sailing, and it was so frustrating. I had no idea what was going on. Fast forward to European, so we're still in our Europe circuit, just a few months into sailing, and I couldn't finish the first race, and we had a pretty bad crash. I like dented my helmet, all this stuff, and so we're like, you know what, we're calling it. We're going in. We're gonna go see some doctors back home and fix this. So that's exactly what I did. And I went through a lot of testing. I'm still scarred for life from this compartment testing that I had done. The needles were really big. Anyways, they did all this testing. Nothing came back positive. They had no idea, they couldn't really diagnose my compartment syndrome. But it kind of got to the point where the doctor's like, well, you can keep sailing, or eventually you're going to do permanent damage to your nerves and your muscles. And so I saw that as I needed to stop sailing or get the surgery. And so there was finally a moment of clarity that I needed to get the surgery. So I did on both of my arms. And it's like night and day. I don't have any more issues anymore, which is I'm so grateful for. And I guess, yeah, I mean, should we talk about Pan Ams, or is that next after Riley talks about his? Or
yeah, definitely. I think kind of your next event after that recovery was the Pan Ams, but I just want to note that in the photo, Anna does have a smile on her face, and through that whole kind of rundown, she was laughing. So I think it just speaks to the lightheartedness of her personality that is making things work so well and kind of persevering through even the largest of challenges. But yeah, I think after your surgery and your recovery, the first event was the Pan Am Games that you two returned to. And let's just kind of touch on that, because that was kind of a big milestone.
Yeah, so super, super special moment. And just back in that photo of me, I was after my first surgery, and I like 3 minutes after I woke up, I was like, I need to call Riley. So that was me on the phone with Riley. But yeah, so the surgeon, actually, he told me the timeline was really tight. It was 8 weeks from my first surgery to the start date of the Pan American Games. And so obviously that would have had to have been a really, really quick recovery. So I was a bit stressed. The doctor told me I wasn't going to be able to compete. He said also that I wasn't going to be able to go to the test event in Japan right after. So obviously I was gutted. But, I with the help of Dr. Chris Ellis and Dr. Micah Cuss, with the U.S. sailing team, I recovered in 6 and 5 weeks respectively on per arm, and was able to go and represent the U.S. at the Pan Am Games with Riley. And so I was so grateful for them in helping me recover quickly, and it was a game changer, and it was so special, to go to our first games, represent the U.S., and fortunately come away with a gold medal and qualify the United States for the Olympics. So that's like my favorite moment of the campaign. I like get goosebumps thinking about it, stepping on the podium with Riley, with the gold medals around her neck. And that was so cool, and something that I'm so proud of, just because of, the recovery process, and, the doctor telling me that I wasn't going to be able to go. So I was like, I had to prove him wrong. But yeah, it was super exciting. So.
Yeah, as Riley would say, you have to really want it, Anna.
Yeah.
Um,
That was a running joke in the NACRA 17 squad for way too long.
let's timestamp this. So kind of the first of when you two started sailing together, what month was that? What year was that? And then what kind of all the way to the Pan Am Games to now?
We started sailing in January of 2019.
I think it was the 14th of January was our first day on the water.
Yeah, and then we went to Palma in March. We did Genoa, World Cup Genoa in May, which was a lighter event, so I didn't really have much effect on my forearms. And then Europeans was right after that in late May. So, we really only had, up until the Pan Ams, 2-3 months of training, which is not a lot. And so it was stressful, but we made the most of it, and obviously it needed to happen, the surgery. So I wouldn't change it for the world.
Yeah, it's really helped our sailing out, and like being able to put the long hours in on the water is definitely a necessity in Olympic sailing. So yeah, we couldn't have done it without the surgeries, I think. But just going to that injury slide, for me, I was all bummed, and actually when I got the call from Anna, I was putting together the boat that would then be used at the Pan Am Games. So I was out in Treasure Island in San Francisco, and answered my call. I'm like, mid Cunningham splice or something like that. And I was like, oh, that's great. Awesome. You just got out of surgery, one more to go. And fortunately, like, we've got a pretty big talent pool of skiff sailors in Southern California. And when we, the squad had big plans to come to Long Beach and train. Obviously, like, Anna couldn't make it for the first couple of weeks, but Evan Heffernan was able to step up and come down, and between working and writing code for his day job, he was out sailing with me on the NACRA and really helped us out, and kept the whole game moving forward, as well as Ravi and Caroline and Sarah and David. So yeah, huge. Like, without those guys, we definitely couldn't have come away with a gold medal at the Pan Ams. And we really owe a lot to the squad, and as well as Jay and Peasy and Sally and Phil. They were all out there supporting as well. Oh, and Pete Melvin too. But yeah, and then on the right, this is end of May, I want to say, early June actually. CLGP New York. Flew out. We had a great week of training ahead of time. Had our first dry hour, let's call it, sailing around in the Hudson. It was blowing 18 knots and raining sideways and just getting pelted by the rain, and it hurt like hell, but got through it. And then we were pretty confident. We'd just come off a decent event in San Francisco, and we're really hungry to do well in New York in front of a home crowd again. And that morning, the morning before racing, everyone says I sneezed and broke my back, but I was actually like precariously like up on the back beam of the F50 trying to close a zipper hatch as we were doing a mooring transfer. And we hit some ferry wakes, and I kind of stuck my arm under the back beam pretty abruptly and aggressively, and ended up tweaking my back pretty severely and had a full muscle spasm and lock up, and that's kind of because of I've got 2 slip discs in my back, so got to be pretty cautious sometimes. But yeah, and kind of going into that and into the 50 sailing, you know, is, I mean, what an opportunity for someone like myself. It's just like, you know, it blows me away. It's like, especially being in quarantine and lockdown, you really look back at all these amazing times, and like it's a really cool group to be a part of. And there's just so many, I mean, like all the greatest professionals in the sport are doing it right now. And, you know, just even walking around the base, talking to, you know, anyone who walks by, whether it's a boat builder, a rigger, or whoever, you know, is like, you're always learning. And for me, like being 22, 23 and being able to do that is pretty special. And I really appreciate the opportunities that I've been given. So, and I love going fast, obviously. So hitting 49 knots is pretty cool.
Yeah, and I think you said, I mean, the events aren't happening this year as scheduled, but one of your goals was to get Anna out on the 50 in San Francisco.
Yeah.
So hopefully that opportunity will be there in the
Yeah.
future. But I think kind of sharing that experience would be pretty special. Why don't we'll touch a little bit on kind of your experience with SailGP and maybe kind of what you've learned from the NACRA that you can apply or you have applied over to sailing the F50 or vice versa, kind of some stuff that you've learned on the F50 and working with that team that you've brought back to you and Anna.
Yeah, so it kind of goes hand in hand. Obviously, the pretty similar platforms. The NACRA obviously being a 4-point foiler with 4 foils in the water, the 50 with 3. One of the biggest differences has got to be the wing sail and the ability to change rudder differential to create riding moment. Whereas on the NACRA, we're on the trapeze, obviously, and creating our own riding moment with our body weight. You know, the 50, we can achieve 7 degrees of rudder differential, which is, you know, close to 1.5 tons of load on the weight, let's call it, on the weather side. So that's kind of how we generate all of our speed. And you know, a lot of the similarities between the two is got to be like communication, working with new people. You know, for Anna and I, we're a very new team, and the same thing goes in the 50. You know, like Rome and I haven't really done that much sailing together. Same with Taylor and Hans and Ben and PK and Dan and Mac at the time. You know, we were all relatively new to each other and learning how each other work, and get really like trying to learn how to get the best out of each other, you know, is a really big thing. So yeah, it's funny like how different the sailing is sometimes, but how similar the problems are and the way you go about executing the solutions. So.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, and I just wanted to touch on something you had said a little bit ago about kind of the squad and the training that you did with the whole U.S. sailing team and how it was a big part in helping you and Anna get to where you are today. So let's just kind of talk a little bit about that and what that is and how important it is. And Sally, I definitely want you to chime in after to give your perspective on the squad behind, because we know every team, it's more than just 2 people on a boat. A lot more goes into it. So Riley, if you want to just kind of talk about that first.
Cool. I think it kind of stems from, you know, the 29er days and the 505 days is like the easiest, most efficient way to learn things and share knowledge is to jump in with other people and work with other people and be, you know, willing to put everything on the line and, you know, really like open up your notebooks and you know, expect the same from your teammate and the people you're sailing against. So, you know, Anna and I have a lot of weaknesses that are the strengths of, you know, Robbie and Caroline or Sarah and David and vice versa. So we're fortunate enough to, you know, have them as a really solid training group. And I thought it really showed, you know, going into Auckland and the Geelong Worlds, we wouldn't have been nearly as prepared as we were without them and the lead up into it all. So yeah, we owe a lot to them, you know, and Sally can kind of speak to that and Anna as well.
Yeah, I guess from my perspective, you know, I sort of joined this group this past summer, really. And it was already, 3 teams that had, really good partnership but maybe weren't at the top of the world. And it was just this, always the desire, I think, in the US is that we need to to balance competition with each other with how we actually get the best in the world. And these 3 teams really made a huge gain together, and we call it the squad. Spent a lot of time in California and Long Beach working together, working on the fundamentals, and then we're over in New Zealand for a pretty big chunk of time before the Worlds, all working together, and then again in Geelong and in Australia. And I think Riley says it just perfectly that you got to be willing to open up your notebook and share everything you've got going on that day, so that what you're doing well someone else can improve on, and what you're not doing well you have a resource to figure out who's doing it better than you. So that's the fundamentals of the squad, and it's the way forward pretty much for our whole US team as we keep building this mentality. It goes along with the ability to have more domestic training now, so it's all a snowball effect. And adding on to that is it's a group, but we're always adding in experts. So, Jay Glazer having his expertise coming in with sail design, and then taking on, more of the speed role with Anna and Riley was like, a huge asset to the team. So, and actually to the whole squad. And I think that's a big highlight with how it has to work. We have to be working together as a group, highlighting your strengths and weaknesses, and then actually bringing in, more expertise so that we can just keep elevating the game. And the more people we have working together, the better off we're going to be. So that's kind of the mentality of it. And yeah, I love working with the group. And I think Riley says it really well when, we have Sarah and David out there on the water pushing really hard, and they had a great Worlds in Australia, pushed Anna and Riley really hard. And then Ravi and Caroline also being really strong in certain conditions. And without that like resource at the fingertips of the whole team, it's really a struggle to make as big of gains as this team has.
Yeah, no, awesome. I think I heard it best from Peter Comment once when I was younger. He says you want to pick your training partners to get to 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and it doesn't really matter who comes in at 1, but it's sharing that knowledge and getting yourselves all at the top to really strengthen. And it's cool to see that the team's kind of adopting this approach, and you can see it in the strength. I know the other NACRA sailors are out there training on the sidelines, doing everything that these guys are doing so that they keep pushing each other forward. So it's really exciting to see. Awesome. So just a little bit on that. I mean, we're talking about the squad and that's kind of your peers, but what about the next generation of sailors entering the NACRA, and how you want to help upskill them, and kind of what you think that'll look like, and the contributions that you can give back to those, like the Olympic development level group that'll be getting on the water as well with you. Anna, you want to take this? We haven't heard from you in a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So, I think we talked about this the other day on a call with the NACRA squad about having, those up and coming sailors come out and train in Long Beach, with us. I think something that maybe, I don't know, we also mentioned this, like that we are missing, is not always getting to train with some of the top guys. And I think as sort of I was at the end of my laser time, I guess, not that long ago, but, started training with Paige and Erica, and, getting to experience that with them. It's just, you take away so much, just from Olympic campaigning, whether it's something so silly, about like something fun that happened on their, in Worlds, or, or just things that you actually learn about sailing. It's huge, and you get really inspired by those people. And so I think what we want to kind of help out with is, inspire those young people to pursue their dreams and pursue this Olympic path. So helping them out as much as they can, and also they're helping us, another boat on the water is another boat on the water. And so I think that's part of our plan, is to incorporate as many youth sailors as we can into our program. And I'm excited about it. I don't know if you guys have anything else to add on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, go ahead, Riley.
Sorry, just off that squad call we had the other day, you know, it was really good to catch up with everyone. You know, we hadn't seen each other in a while, and it was good to see everyone's faces. And kind of speaking towards like the domestic training and kind of the opportunity we have ahead of us is like, you know, really developing these skills. But fortunately enough, like each one of our campaigns, we all own, you know, a multitude of boats. So um, unfortunately, the Olympics are postponed for a year, but that means all of our equipment is now headed here to Long Beach, and so you know we can invite these NACRA 15 kids to come sailing with us in Long Beach and have like twice the amount of boats on the starting line and start developing their skills. And soon enough, they're going to be pushing us, which I mean is really like the goal behind it all. You know, you really want some continuity between the quads, and that's the best way to do it. So I think something that we're gonna try and take on as a NACRA squad is each like adopt a NACRA 15 team and really just take them under our wings and kind of show them how we would do it, and hopefully you know they follow in our footsteps and pursue the same path. But yeah.
And I think on a more you know, level of around the world, I think like us or them coming and sailing with us, and you know what we learn from them, what they learn from us, you know, can help develop the US to become a powerhouse, you know, in all classes, and just dominate around the world. And I think that's, I don't know, that's kind of the vision that I think we all would want, you know, is the US bringing home tons of gold medals, especially with the games being in LA in 2028. You know, that would be so huge to see, you know, the US just keeping the medals in the US. So yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's an exciting time for U.S. sailing and Olympic sailing in general, and just kind of to see the growth. I mean, with a development class like the NACRA, with so much changing and so much developing, the different sailors that are going to be able to rise up and all that develop is going to be really exciting. Awesome. So we're gonna just take a couple questions from the audience in no specific order, but one that came in was kind of wondering what the average time you're spending on the water each month, and if you could average that out.
Ooh, each month.
Quick maths.
Yeah. No, what was it? In Geelong, we were talking about this. It was like 5 days a week, 4 months in a row, you know, ahead of the Auckland Worlds it was, right?
Yeah, Auckland, I think we had good
Was it
amount of days on the water.
20 hours a week,
Yeah.
right? Somewhere around there. But
Yeah, that's from Ben Rosenberg, your N15 sailor.
Yeah.
He's
Hey Ben.
Get on your 17, man. Come out to Long Beach.
itching to get there. So JB also wanted to ask what the transition from the 29er to the NACRA 17 was like.
Oof.
You should tell him to get in the 15.
Yeah. For me, the 15 wasn't available. It kind of came in, you know, 2 years after. So after I ended the 29er kind of portion of my life. But I think the biggest transition was going from crewing in the 29er. You know, I'd driven the 420 and a little bit of I-420 sailing ahead of that, and doing a lot of 505 helming, sailing with Howie, Hamlin, and Andy Zinn, and the whole Team Tuesday group down in Long Beach, and Mike, and you know all the heroes in the 505 class. But yeah, the biggest transition was kind of the two-hull side effect of it. You know, it's like, wait a second, I'm used to this weird saucer planing thing going across the water, and you know, now it's just a NACRA with two toothpicks flying through the water. So yeah, Louisa was very patient with me, I gotta say, as well as Sarah. You know, Sarah came out with us a couple times and kind of, you know, showed me how to do it, let's say, and how to tack and how to jive, and you know, rate a turn was obviously a big thing because you can, you know, the boats get going pretty quick, and in the old style boat you can G yourself off the boat almost as easy as you can on the new style. So yeah, it was a lot of patience from Louisa, really putting up with me. So I was fumbling all over the place for the first month and a half or so, but we got there in the end.
You finally admit that, Riley. You
Yeah.
never told me that when I was learning.
Okay, we have a question from Mike Martin. I know you know pretty well, Riley. Is what's your favorite place to sail? And we'll let Anna start with this one. While you-
Ooh. So I always have to say, well, you know, home, Lauderdale, it's a pretty epic place to sail, but probably, oh, it's kind of hard to pick one. I don't think this is fair. Probably San Francisco. That's epic.
Really?
I think so. I
You hate
mean,
the cold.
yeah, the cold, but I mean, it's such an epic place to sail, you know, the Golden Gate in the back, like that's,
Mhm.
you just can't even beat that, you know?
All right, for me, it's got to be Mauritius, and there's a kiting photo in the previous slides, but yeah, Mauritius is an island. I think it's like 1,000 miles northeast of Madagascar, in the middle of the Indian Ocean, and it's like the most pristine, clearest water I've ever been in. You know, and we're lucky enough, like kite racing, it's pretty easy to, you know, logistics wise, to just throw all your crap in a bag and fly around the world with it. So we're pretty lucky to go to these amazing venues, and that is definitely a place I recommend anyone to go to. It was not only are you like racing around the course and doing 30 knots, it's like the water's 4 feet deep and you're flying over coral heads and trying not to hit fish and stuff. And yeah, it was just spectacular.
Awesome. And we definitely want to hear from you, Sally, on, because I know you've
Oh.
been to quite a few venues.
Yeah, I run around with different highlights, but I would say that, you know, I grew up on a lake in Wisconsin, and then now I live in the mountains. So for me, the combination of Lake Garda is just pretty awesome, because you're beautiful lake. It's huge. It's got mountains all around it, and the wind doesn't really pump in until around noon, so you can have a chill out morning and then always have pretty awesome breeze in the
What about the morning breeze? Do you
Well, you can. It goes the other
Really?
way. So you can have the lighter morning breeze, but like you can it's like a very consistent thermal that normally comes in, and it's gorgeous, and you can mountain bike there, and yeah, it has good pizza, as my nephew always reminds me. So
Gelato.
yeah, the gelato, you can't beat the gelato.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the whole package. All right, here's another fun one. And we'll start with you, Riley. What's your craziest sailing moment?
Oh, I feel like I had one recently. First time sailing the 50 was pretty cool. We're sailing in Northport in Whangarei in New Zealand, and there was like thousands of birds and dolphins like everywhere in this bay we were sailing in. And I obviously, like, you know, 21 years old or whatever, and just like frothing to get on the boat, and finally like got on the boat, and I was sitting up, you know, TJ, Tom Johnson was trimming the wing for rum at the time, and everyone's just getting settled in the boat. And, you know, I was sitting up by the pod near the wing, and like as soon as we just took off foiling, and the acceleration was just like, you know, you just hit the gas pedal in the car and you're like just jolt forward, and you know, it's just all, I mean, so overwhelming. But I gotta say that stuff we did in Sydney, in race 2 of CLGP in Sydney this year, is pretty spectacular. We're doing 47 knots downwind and pretty much 47 to 4 knots in about half a second. So that was pretty exciting. I ended up head first in the grinding cockpit, which is like 7 feet away from me, forward in the F50, head first, like upside down, holding onto the wing sheet. But yeah, that's pretty exciting. Yeah.
Awesome.
Always
Yeah.
wear a helmet.
Big power. Anna, what about you? Craziest sailing moment?
Oof. I mean,
I know what
transitioning
you're
from
gonna say.
laser sailor to the NACRA, I feel like there's a lot of crazy moments for me. Japan is wet and wild. That was pretty an eye-opening experience for me. But I think the most recently sailing in Australia. We went out. It was the last day of Oceanias. And there were tons of storms, summer in Australia, and we go out, it's pretty windy. It's probably, 20 knots, 20 plus knots, steady 20 knots. And so, and the little bay we were sailing in Geelong was really short. So they were having a sailing L3s, which is, 3 laps around the course. So they're pretty long races. And I can't remember I think it was just our second race. And this huge squall comes through. I don't know how windy it was. How windy do you think it was, Riley? Like
Easy
30.
30. I don't know. Sally
Yeah.
had the wind gear on the rib, but it was like it was
30,
blowing
28.
whitecaps off.
Yeah. It was so gnarly, and I was really it was pretty scary, but we were all looking around at each other like, are we gonna, are they gonna cancel this race? And we kept doing laps, and they just like didn't cancel it. And so Riley gave me a pat on the back after that one. He's like, you did it. I was like, yay, I'm alive.
On starboard leyland, we're like leading the race, and we're looking behind us like, are we actually gonna round this mark? And
Yeah.
Anna's like, I don't want to go downwind.
But thankfully we had practiced all of our windy barroways in New Zealand, so we were pretty comfortable with our barroways. So
Yeah, I got a whole bunch of pitch poles out of the way.
yeah, I got a whole bunch of pitch poles out of the way, but that was probably the craziest moment. Hopefully my new crazy moment will be on the F50 someday.
Yeah, awesome. Well, that's about all the time we have today. I want to thank you, the 3 of you, for joining us. Really awesome. For those of you watching, if you want to follow Gibbs Weiss Racing, you can definitely do that. Their website and Instagram handle is linked on just below the feed, so definitely check that out. But thank you all of you 3 for joining. Really nice to have you on the portal today. And for those listening, if you enjoyed today's session, please support our efforts to help build community of active and engaged sailors through the Starboard portal by purchasing or renewing a U.S. Sailing membership. We have a lot of great content coming up on the schedule, and thanks to the U.S. Sailing members, we're able to adapt and evolve to better serve sailors with content like this. So thank you, everyone, for making this possible, and thank you, Anna, Riley, and Sally for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Thanks.